broadcast.
All right, here we are.
Finally here.
Yeah, finally here. You want to scoot maybe a little bit closer to that?
Yep.
Voice of Electronic Music, number 39 with Carolyn Fok.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
All right.
Thanks for coming down here.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. So we're here at Halcyon, downtown San Francisco. I'm with Carolyn Fok. She is a electronic musician and producer. DJ? Do you DJ at all?
No, I don't.
Don't DJ. Okay.
Yes.
But you perform live.
A lot more recently.
A lot more recently.
Yeah.
Okay.
But so I'm fundamentally a studio musician, actually. I mean, just I have an archive that goes back to probably the 70s, 70s as a childhood, and the 80s, 90s, from cassettes to DATs to reels. I mean, so everything's been so studio.
Yeah.
And probably within like this last year or so, it's just been a steady live. So I've had to really develop a whole new mindset and how to integrate like studio stuff. And luckily there's software now that can do quite a lot.
Right.
So and then once I discovered the softwares, and then what more can you do? So I've really not, I'm right about to do a surround version, a multi-speaker version of my set. So
Wow.
So everything's really just exploded this year.
Yeah.
With stuff.
That's awesome. So are you talking like 5.1? Are you or the envelope? Is it envelope?
It's interesting. When I first wanted to think about live, I was already thinking about surround, but I didn't know where to do that. I know about envelope, but they may have a different approach to what they want to do. And then there were other, more technology supported, sort of festivals like
Sure.
MUTEK.
Yeah,
that's where we met.
That's where we met. Yeah.
And although that was its own thing, but so I've had to develop a whole new idea about live. So when I'm just doing more. I've done a variety, clubs or festivals or whatever, but this one coming up November 16th. They already have a gray area. They already have a 8 speaker surround.
Whoa.
So you just really need your channels.
Sure.
I don't know if they say 5.1 or whatever, but I have the option of 8.
Oh.
But I actually thought maybe quad might be a better idea because I like the illusion of 8.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you have it all set up, it's already, you can hear it and you know where it is. But if you've got the illusion of where, from one farther spread, then the illusion, you have more of that. And then it's more like an atmosphere.
Sure.
So I'm kind of playing around with that. And it's interesting because I'm pulling out, and from my archive, when I did my archive, it ended up being about 100 albums.
Wow, that's right.
Yeah,
That was jaw dropping for me when I heard that you had like 100 albums at least released. And I mean your website, what is it? It's the Memoir of Sound. That's right. Is like a living archive of your recordings all the way back to the 70s. And there's ones there where there was one in particular, a couple that really struck me where I think it was one of the first 2 that you posted, and it was, let's see, what was it? 1978 to 1979. And you were talking to yourself, and you had recorded, and you said, "This is me now," and then I'm gonna touch back in a year later, and then it immediately cuts to, "This is how I sound a year later."
That's amazing. You pinpoint that one because thank you, because it's interesting. Back then, I already knew I wanted to do a diary, but I started a physical pen diary back then. I actually have over 50 diaries, physical diaries already.
Wow.
And that's kind of almost simultaneous to the recording diaries. So, but that was that was the recording diary. So I knew every year I wanted to record my voice, like every year or something that happened.
Yeah.
But I think what happened was it stopped that diary entry probably stopped around my teenager years because then I discovered a 4-track.
Oh.
From my father actually built a drum machine in the 70s. So
That's right. Yeah.
And then he built other stuff like analog delay, flangers, from the kits, like what people are doing today, like do-it-yourself stuff.
Right.
That was by Paya.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So when I discovered that, I discovered it. He didn't say, well, here it is, but I just found it in the living room and then he just put different instruments like from thrift flea markets or whatever, like around.
Yeah.
So the only thing I can think of is just like you're bored and you're plugging things together. I don't know anything about multi-track at all.
Yeah.
And actually, my first multi-track was actually using 2 tape recorders.
Whoa.
To record tape recorder, and then putting effects and just to see, because I actually invented my own version, but I didn't know it existed.
Didn't know what it really was.
I didn't know multi-tracking at all.
Yeah.
And I also didn't have a mixer.
Right.
So the only way to get the sounds together is actually just like to create a variation in the sound, in terms of like EQ today, would be, like recording something through an app and just shifting a microphone different direction to get a different tonality and do it that way, and then just cram in. When I discovered the 4-track, I didn't know when to stop either, so I didn't like cutting tape.
Yeah.
So physical tape is just like I didn't want to ruin it. So I had to turn the recorder on off to just like get my takes. So they became what's known today as experimental because that's what you're not even trying to be that, you just don't know what you're doing. And then that of course when I discovered a little bit more about how to use reel to reel, and all that, so it's all mostly self-taught stuff.
Totally.
And so anyway, so I'm kind of so many of those instances and all those creations, and some of them became essential releases, but a lot of them were just these. To me, again, they're diary entries, right? So they remain there. They don't erase over, and so anyway, I'm pulling some of those out, and I ended up, when from analog to digital, I kind of experienced that whole evolution. Then I started just honing in on, like, for some reason I like drum machines and so I started programming drum machines I started just programming it on like of course there's sampling and all that stuff, so I guess I started creating like rhythms through like a synclavier, for example, when that I had access to that. So anyway, I'm bringing some of that up and trying to use surround, and because we have something like Ableton, we can actually warp and have them in time, like have layers of time periods.
Right.
So you have like, you can mix something from the 90s with the 80s or whatever, or today, and then have them like be in sync, but have them in different speakers at the same time.
Oh, that's cool. Wow.
So that I'm exploring that. And the other technology I'm really super into, and I need time to explore more, is the Sensormorph. And I actually...
What is that?
Oh, it's like it's a multi-touch sensory pad. Like you can, it's I don't know if you've heard of MPE. It's like MIDI polyphonic expression.
Oh, okay.
So each note you can assign anything to it, like different sound. Like if you pressure sense something, you can create layers with different sounds.
Oh yeah.
So I have I just got my second Sensel and Morph, and the first one you can design. What I did was, instead of like a drum pad, where you're looking for menus live. I just want to see it all in one like page.
Sure. Yeah.
So like I designed a page with like 40 samples like I might use versus like trying to see like a regular jump pad like 8 or something.
Yeah.
And you have to go through
like
menu.
The
or
Kai pads type of thing. Yeah.
I thought of that, but then I thought it's not going to cut it
Right.
for what I do. So anyway, so I designed like this pad that I can play. Have access to it visually. And the other sensomorph would be accessing an iPad where I can do pressure sensitive pads. So
Wow.
I'm kind of doing two things, balancing that.
Sure.
And the surround of the polyphonic drums.
Holy cow. Wow.
So that's really fun.
That's amazing.
So so I have access to a space that has this 8 speakers if I want to, and so it's kind of ideal because we're talking about memories and there's field recordings I've done.
Yeah.
So it's a nice kind of canvas. I always saw everything like canvases. So I never stepped away from I never just let go of like computer land and went modular. I just didn't go there.
Yeah.
Right. I like the pencil on the I'm visual. And actually
I'm
my
the same way. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Good.
Except for reading, I only do audiobooks now.
Yeah. I know. Like I need to have time to like 1 year audiobook.
I got to be cleaning and or driving or
I know.
multitasking.
Exactly.
The idea of just sitting there in bed. I mean, it sounds very relaxing, but sitting there in bed or in my room just reading. I don't know. I guess maybe it's my ADD freaks out.
It is.
It's like I could be doing something else as well.
I know. It's like after like a paragraph. I need to be doing.
Yes. Yeah.
I know.
Totally.
Yeah. So.
Wow. So that's really cool. So, I mean, just the idea of having 8 speakers at your disposal, and your recordings going all the way back from to your early years. I mean, and then being able to maybe you could throw one of the field recordings from when you were 21 or whatever, or in one speaker, and then have some new stuff that's coming straight out of a VST and Ableton out of another, and all of it comes together as one kind of conglomeration of your music, and it becomes a really intense, awesome experience.
Yeah, I think I've always been very like neurological or cerebral. Like I've it's everything. I mean, I think that's why it's sort of a projection of like perhaps how we all kind of experience things in some pieces, and that's why I still use sampling, and I like, if you don't like sampling, you don't like recording, because a recording is a whole sample.
Yes.
So we can go really deep into this subject, but I mean, I think that I mean, I'm always into the psychological aspect of why we do things, and so and that's why when I get all the materials that I create that you hear are completely sculpted or sound designed, and if it's a field recording, I record it all myself.
Yeah.
From getting my recent trip with being tear gassed.
Oh my God.
My Hong Kong trip.
Oh, what happened there? You told me that you had gone to Hong Kong, but
so it's interesting. Like, originally, I booked the flight like 6 months in advance. I had no idea. Like, it started June 9 or something in Hong Kong, and then we arrived on 13th. Me and my 8-year-old autistic son.
Oh, jeez.
And the reason why I brought him is to finally, at the age of, he's 8, but to improve social skills and cultural, reintroduce like my parents' background. Like, my father is actually more Hong Kong raised, and my mother's China raised, or not. Well, more that style. So I have those both.
Yeah.
Now that's the big conflict, right? So anyway, so I went there, and that whole thing started like, we were there. And but the interesting thing is, like, we return, and I thought I got to do a double take. Like this is something, and it's so visual, and I'm in it for the audio and the visual aspect. It's so incredible, you know, what we're seeing. And
what are you talking about in specific? You mean while you're out there, or?
Well, in the summer, there were just like 2 million people out on protesting and things like that. Yeah. But there were eventually they've gotten more disguised with their gear and their face mask and. And but the violence didn't start yet. I mean, it was just beginning. Like maybe when I left in mid-July. Yeah. Then I started, watching more, and I thought, I to be honest, whenever I saw like a journalist like filming, I got jealous.
Really?
Like I'm like I want to get mine.
Yeah. You're like yeah. So were you timid to break out your phone and start recording, or
in the summer? Yeah, I did some. Definitely. Some, yeah. But then in there was a particular time period, on their National Day, which was now in history the biggest day where they, the most tear gas has been used that day. But anyway, I planned to be there because. Oh, wow. And I studied my gear. I mean, really, so I mean, I went geared up, but got really, my good camera and everything. So then, after, I mean, that day was, of course, I got what I was looking for. Yeah. I mean, I thought, okay, frontline journalism, I'm going to do this, Right. And then it became, photojournalism. And then it became any excuse to go, like, eat Korean barbecue or something. because that event,
That's basically my life in a nutshell. An excuse to go eat Korean barbecue. Because
as soon as after 7 days, like, because I was there when they imposed the mask ban. Because they, you can't have it. So at that time, I'm like, and watching, the riot police come, I was like, okay, what else can I do? But I know what it's like now. I got I got so many images, and the recordings I got. I got pretty much what I needed. So I'm hoping to put together like my own little documentary, but I actually want to build a soundtrack for what I experienced. Because I see a lot of documentaries, but I think there's an emotional thing that when your heart's pumping or the whole chaos of it's chaos, but at the same time they're really unified though. I mean, those people that are they're unified on both sides. I mean, they're in its own thing. And
it's the government versus the people, right? I mean, that's what is that? Do I have it correct? I mean, because people were cutting down surveillance tower cameras and that sort of thing, and wearing the masks.
Yeah, it goes. There's so much to say about it. Yeah. But from my perspective, like, they're all young. Those kids, they're really young. Yeah. So, it's my heart goes out. So, but anyway, but from my view, it was to me, it was all visual and all audio for me. Like because it's really unique. I mean, when do you ever see like a total smashed in Starbucks, man?
Yeah, right, yeah.
And then like it was just like firing, and all these fires in front of like the train stations and everything. Yeah. You just don't see that.
And just raw emotion. I mean, people kind of at their wits' end and rioting and that sort of thing. And I mean. It's
they don't like to call it riot.
Yeah. Well, protesting. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, but I'm with you. I like to document things, and I of course record. I've been recording for a long time, and so I understand that pull to want to capture things and that sort of thing.
I don't think I've ever been pulled that strong. I think because of my background. I mean, because I haven't never like when I'm in I was I'm an Asian American, so like, you know, I went with like some history over in Hong Kong and China or whatever, but I never felt that connected to my culture here. I just I've just never have.
Yeah.
And I always end up going back to Asia, and then just it's just I've gone back there all the time.
Right.
But it's such an unusual time. Like, this is just almost like not happening because it's so intense. So like was really drawn. I mean, so anyway, but that kind of is a part of the diary thing too, and it's this thing where like, I just wonder, is this a real historical moment in time? And I don't know when it's going to end, but it's. I mean, even that the blue ink, the truck with the blue spray. I mean, to me, it was like paint. Like, wow, look at this color.
Right.
You know, I was looking from a different kind of view.
What were they doing? They were spraying people with blue ink.
Oh, the blue dye, like these trucks.
Oh,
the police would come in with these, like down the street with these blue ink, just spraying people. Wow. But to me, I was like, look at this color. I mean, I was looking from a different view. You know,
from an artist. But I mean,
it was,
as an artist, I mean, you really you kind of view everything through that lens. You know what I mean? So I know what you mean. It's
yeah, I mean, I was able to, you know, remove myself, but there's the people there that really have to. I mean, they have to work it out somehow. But anyway, so that it's a personal thing for me too, because it's just I've never seen Hong Kong like that. Yeah. You know, I know that city really well, and like, that's that place that, you know, I did, you know, like, so so I can, you know, inform my soundtrack or whatever through my history or whatever,
totally.
And put that weird emotion I felt that you know, it's just so unusual.
Totally.
So anyway, that's part of my diary thing.
It's sort of therapeutic being able to put your feelings in. I mean, you know, we've been doing it for so long. I'm sure you know that, but you know, I mean, whether it's video or audio or even, you know, art or just writing it down. I mean, it's a big deal. You know, like getting it down and out of your brain and onto something.
Well, that's interesting you say that, because during that time in Hong Kong, I had my physical diary with me, and I wrote like a paragraph, like, because you're so tired and you're so, you know, running around, that I think the video camera, you know, like, it helped, you know, give me that ability to just like on the spot. It was my kind of. It was my diary was the video thing.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
So is this, you mentioned you're doing a documentary. I hope I didn't spoil anything.
No.
But
it's just my own pet thing.
Yeah, yeah. So is that something you're starting to incorporate a little bit more too, is video? Yeah,
I have a lot of little projects now that I'm like so behind. So that's kind of one of them. There's a couple of different things that I'm trying to add up together, and I don't know, that may be a new little medium for me. I feel like I'm kind of driven towards that right now.
Yeah.
To do that, and plus I have a little documentary about my the music stuff too,
Sure.
and I need to get that. I haven't really done that too much, so I feel I'm a little drawn to it now, and you know, it being a medium that I can communicate a message or whatever.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
And you understand.
Oh, I do very much so. Yeah, yeah. I mean, doing this. This is the most video I think I've done. I did some projects with some friends. You know, shooting kind of nightlife stuff, and you know, in nightclubs and bars and that sort of thing. And that was, you know, that was a really good way to kind of. Get myself really well versed in a variety of settings, right? And so that was, you know, doing this project. It was like, okay, we have this thing that we're going to do, and we're going to do it, you know, every week, and really just that consistency of going out and bringing your camera and just having your camera and forcing yourself to get out there and use it. You know what I mean? And the repetition is what you know, got me to a point where now, and I'm like, oh, hey, I want to shoot this podcast, and it's like, oh, it's, you know, you're it's just experience, you know, it's experience. And then it's a definitely it was a new medium for me, coming from a musician and a sound engineer as well, but not entirely different. I mean, it's different in the sense that you can see it, where we've already in my personal opinion, I think that so when audio people get into video, I've noticed that it's a little bit easier than when video people get into audio, because audio is kind of this black magic art where you can't see it, right? And so if something's going wrong, it's much more difficult to kind of suss it out,
It's interesting.
Yeah, whereas with video, you can see, there's this weird glitch, or there's black bars on the sides, and what's going on. You can ask people, but a lot of times for audio, people don't even know how to describe what it is that's going wrong with their sound, right? And so that was, I think you'll probably find it's not entirely, as difficult as maybe learning, sound has been.
Well, at least you can use it as a sample for a song.
For sure, yeah, exactly.
And if you have ADHD, then it solves the problem.
Exactly right. So, listening to your early recordings, I'm a huge fan of the sound of tape and cassettes, and really kind of, at the time, I'm sure all that stuff was fairly high fidelity for the time. Now it's kind of, you listen back to it and it's kind of almost vintagey sounding. I'm a huge fan of that sound, and it's something I kind of try to recreate to this day with, my own music, is making things sound less digital and less brittle and kind of more warm and weird and funky, and some of those early recordings. I there was one I was listening to in particular where you were talking to the recorder, and there was some, it almost sounded like a bass synth in the background. I doubt it was that, but but it was like a, and it's like these weird kind of artifacts get picked up from a lot of that old stuff.
Well, sometimes it's the mic itself, because I used a like a reverb mic, a mic that was a reverb in the mic. Oh, interesting. So sometimes, or you just talk really close. Yeah. Another way to make things sound more vintage is just turn down the high frequency. Yeah. That's about it.
Yeah, right. Just roll off the highs.
Yeah, exactly. And that's about it. Because that's what it was lacking. That's frequency. High frequency. But I don't know about the recreation. Like I tend to just move forward. Like I enjoy the stuff from that time period, and when things were developing in with tape and everything. I made like 50 tapes of it already. Like I feel like I've done it in a way. So I tend to not move back, but so at least now I just kind of just bring what I did have as the authentic thing, and just try to, like, what I do, like say live, I would build a reinforcer, like say if it's an old beat, then I would sync and a real analog drum machine with it to kind of reinforce it, to give it that more punch. Yeah. That's one technique, to have both. So I probably don't go one or the other. I probably just like it all.
Totally. Totally. Yeah.
But I know that's an interesting. I mean, it's a whole new culture of that. Now, so so I can't. I haven't. As I said, I haven't gone. I probably. I mean, the modular thing might be interesting. I haven't gone that way. It's just I need the screen. Yeah. And I see there's an experiential aspect of it, to let something flow, and I think that's also very therapeutic. So I don't know why, for me, my therapy is just editing. Totally. It's like editing's therapeutic.
Yeah, right.
Does not even like
some people,
sound. I mean, it's just,
some people would think of that like, it's about as exciting as filing your taxes or something. You know what I mean? Or working in Excel. But I totally get it. It can be very therapeutic.
It's funny because it's interesting, the process in the 80s. Like, I lived in a building where there was a theater. Whoa. It's like right out my door was a theater. Yeah. And I was like almost the only tenant. And so I was really, isolated. And so whenever I found a friend, kind of, I was like in my 20s and he was in the 40s, and we kind of met at a cafe, and he was just explaining physics in the evening, about different dimensions. And I was like, to me that was therapeutic, like talking about physics.
Yeah.
Because when you're isolated, you're like, what's going on with the world?
That stuff fascinates me as well. I mean, physics, and I've been meaning to get some audiobooks or podcasts about quantum physics. That stuff really fascinates me.
Well, that's why I'm so I'm very drawn to the whole, like, the cerebral neurology and things like that. Because I have a son who's a savant. He's an autistic savant.
Right.
And like, he's 8 years old, and he's memorized almost up to 400 pi numbers,
Holy
for example. So then, I have to take him to therapies and stuff. So I need to get there's things that where you can get brain mapping and and analyze what's going on. But then I thought of what else can you do with brain mapping? Like, can we map our own frequencies and create something like just more creative with like computer technology and stuff.
I mean, as soon as they're able to get the sounds out of your brain into a DAW without having to use your hands, you can just think it. There's a app that's in Kickstarter or a program that I saw recently, and what it does is it takes the sounds of your voice, your mouth sounds, and you can hook it into MIDI. So you use a microphone, and you can go, and make beats, and it will just translate that into it'll hook based, I guess, on the frequencies, or maybe it's using some voice recognition, but it will take, it'll essentially, you can just make sounds with your mouth, but it will translate those into whatever synthesizer you have or drum machine.
Okay, I can see that.
Really cool. And I mean, you could come up with stuff just quickly.
Well, what I did, there was a program called Text-to-MIDI. I don't know, but anyway, there was one where I would write something, and then it would convert that to MIDI.
Whoa!
Like, I don't know if you can assign those certain notes, but somehow it would convert it to MIDI. So then I would use that MIDI as part of like starting a track.
Whoa, that's cool.
So that that kind of stuff, that translation stuff. So there's a lot of potential, and that's why like the Sensomorph thing is so interesting to me, because it's the pressure sensitive and MPE is kind of new right now, but what else can you do with something that translates your own expression?
Right.
And it's on to something. I don't know what total yet, but it's something that's so has so much potential.
Right.
And if I can hook up a brain frequency to that, and then like so I know, so it's a lot of interesting things going on.
I feel like we're right there, because
It's
they're
almost
using.
there,
I was probably 8 or 9, maybe 10 years ago that I went to the game conference. I can't remember what it is, but they have it, here at the, one of the, what's the big conference area in Soma where they have big events. I don't know, I can't remember, but there was a one booth that they had there where they would hook your brain up to, put sensors on it, and that would go into the video game. And if you focused and you used, like, if you concentrated on certain things, you could lift things in the video game. So,
I've seen that.
We're right there.
It's like and then that thing in the video game is like it's this hologram.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And then if like there's this one where you can lift a spaceship or something. If you concentrate hard enough, it'll move or something like that. So I don't know what that is, like using EEG or something. I don't know what it's using, but that's interesting.
Yeah.
I want to take a look at that.
Yeah, me too. So not to jump around too much, but once you kind of got past the just using audio recorders and that sort of thing, you really started to dive into like electronic music. What were you using more, like synthesizers, drum machines, samplers, a combination of all of them? What's kind of your favorite or
Are you asking about a time period or
no? Well, I guess maybe how you started, then what's your current setup like? What's your
Oh yeah, I mean
studio like?
it's been through so many lifetimes, and I mean it's and if you go through my catalog, I mean it's actually laid out in chronological order because that's the only way you can to organize this
right.
by date and time. And my diaries are date and time, so everything's date and time.
Yeah.
And so I mean, of course, in the very beginning, it was all those just tape recorders and and stuff, just physical instruments and multi-instrument stuff, and I basically I didn't see them as instruments; they're just sounds, right? And then putting them through effects. I mean, that was just for some reason I just, maybe that was like I don't know why I did that, but instead of playing regular songs.
Well, it's exciting.
I don't know. I mean,
it sounds like you kind of were approaching it with, which makes sense. I mean, kind of making experimental stuff and then electronic. I mean, a lot of it is just almost like a science experiment,
But at the same time, again, it's I look at everything, or I've processed everything more like psychological at the time. So maybe at the time, like, I was troubled in the teenager or whatever, and so like everything's murky and dark and like weird or something. I mean, so it probably came out of, that's the therapeutic thing back then. But anyway, so that was that, and then things really just kind of when MIDI started becoming introduced, I just jumped onto that because I have a problem with chords.
Oh yeah,
I have a little bit of a problem, and
I'm not much of a pianist either or anything. I tell people I play the computer.
Yeah, of course, that's
Yeah.
And so I mean, when we got to get rid of chords, I mean that at that time it was like the exciting thing is to get rid of that. So I just jumped right on it, and then I when Sampling came, it was. This interesting thing because at the time there was something called Sound Designer, that was before the Pro Tools.
Yeah.
You remember that? Oh my God!
Well, because I went to audio school, and so they kind of gave us this history of yeah.
So the thing is, you had to edit every you had visual waveform, but you had to edit say you had 10 drum samples or whatever, and you affected each sample with something different. Like you have to edit the tops and tails of every single one, then put it in a sampler.
Whoa.
Put it in one, right?
Right.
So I had 10 DAT tapes, 120 minutes, and how am I going to, right? So I actually developed a program that truncates all of it for you.
Whoa.
You just put it in,
auto truncate.
It was called Robotic Editor.
Whoa.
And so basically just did it. And so it just whipped out in at the time, say a minute, and you get 500 samples.
Holy cow.
And then I would choose the best of those affected drums and then put it in a sampler. And that's how some of my, the works that ended up on CD or whatever, some of my more industrial electronic stuff, and the style in my own style came about because I had a lot of samples, and I didn't. I don't think people at the time really had access to this auto truncator, and so then I took advantage of that, and so a lot of my work is just a lot of these interesting sound design stuff. So when you hear my work today, it's any kind of sound you hear was completely designed. And the field recordings were kind of merged into it, but it's not like I just turn on a drum machine and you just hear the same sound.
No, yeah.
Which is today, that's kind of what you hear, sort of.
A lot of it. Well, yeah, a lot of house music, techno.
It's the same sound.
Yeah, a lot of genres too derive their sound. But the genre sound from these machines, right?
That's true.
The 909, the 808, the
totally.
606, all that stuff.
Yeah. So to avoid that, I'm conscious of that, and so I try to make it really, texturally interesting or whatever.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that was that set in the 90s.
Yeah.
So and then it became. Then I discovered specializations, 3D sound. Mid 90s, when it was this new cyber thing happening, and that cyber culture, and so I thought, what else is new in audio? Because I mean, how many delays, reverb, like the same. So then there was spatial audio, 3D. So then I kind of like met people who were developing that kind of stuff. So then I had that kind of, sort of a new technology that could, I don't want to say envelop, but it was a part. It was made, my album sound different, or
sure. Well, I think that's kind of what envelop is that you have floor to ceiling, speakers in front of you, behind you, one on the ground, one halfway up, a bunch of them, above you, and then I think they use a Ableton Live plugin, and you're able to place these sound tracks, and kind of pan them around. I mean, we have the Dolby Atmos system here.
Oh, you have Atmos, okay.
Which is similar.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it's similar, but envelop is kind of, we don't have, the speakers on the ground here that are used for Atmos are subwoofers. So kind of everything in Atmos is kind of overhead, whereas like the envelop thing is kind of, I guess, maybe a little bit more technically 3D, because you could have a sound that's not a subwoofer coming from by your feet or whatever. You know what I mean?
Well, in the 90s, actually, I mean, that's all stems from things that were in the 90s, actually, because like Panasonic in Tokyo had 750 speakers.
Whoa.
A whole, it might still be there, I'm not sure. But there's the headsets now, it all stemmed from that time period.
Yeah.
And so I mean, there's that place Audium. Do you know that place?
No.
Oh, you don't know that?
No.
That's in San Francisco.
Is it?
It's been
What
around
is
for
it?
ages. It's this place it's been set up for ages, but I think it was funded by the endowment at some point. But I don't remember how many speakers, maybe like 80, or I'm actually don't remember the exact number. But you just walk in a room, and then the lights go dim, and then there's like sound effects, and they have little close by tiny ones, and then you have the woofers in the back, and so it's just this guy that's been doing it forever.
Oh, it's awesome! I'm gonna have to check that out.
You have to. You should. So I have been exposed to all those kind of options in terms of surround. So when I'm it's not so new. But the thing is, if you're going to do surround, like, you have to have access to the speakers. And so when I just didn't. It's not as practical for me. So what I did was I just invested my interest in headphones in terms of creating it in your headphones.
Right.
Because I found technology where you can actually experience things vertically.
Whoa.
In headphones, where usually specialization, you have like maybe some space, but it's really hard to find ones that that's compatible with your software, for example, like Pro Tools or whatever. And then I don't even think they have it. Right. I don't know who has it, but and then that technology in the 90s actually just it tried its hand in the music industry, but how many but people found, like, saxophones aren't going to be always moving around your head. Okay. So they went into gaming. So it ended up going there, and it's probably still there. And they probably
movies
in movies, So it's probably the best technology is actually over there.
Whoa.
But I want to use it in music, and
totally.
And if I'm doing diary type stuff, then it's like these memories. That's why I like samples, because they're literal, and I'm kind of nonfiction in fiction. Like, I like to make something, pull something that's kind of like something that happened to me or whatever, and then create that story or whatever. So so I always like compose and do everything in headphones now.
I do a lot too.
Yeah.
I mean, I live with roommates, so part of it is kind of out of respect. I was talking about this in the last podcast, but like, so they don't hear the same sound that I'm working on over and over, or the same song or whatever. But also too, for myself, I find that I get locked into what it is I'm working on a little bit more, and that's probably my ADD, as well. Having a literal leash to my my music setup, and having it right here kind of, pulls me into the creation experience a little bit more.
That's a good way of putting it. That's probably why I do it. I mean, these days.
Yes.
It is like it's your little world, like, and for some, it just helps you focus or something. I don't know what it is.
Totally.
So, and again, it's that cerebral thing again. So it has to be in my head or whatever.
Yeah. Right.
But so that's in all these different ways of working.
That's great. I've always been. I mean, that's actually my obsession is samplers. That's what I started with. I started with the Ensoniq ASR10, and just the ability to just feed sounds into this keyboard or machine or whatever. It blew my mind. Because it's like it's a multi sampler, almost like a multi-track tape unit or something, but you can manipulate the sounds and you can play them back in different orders, and and so my sound is like I've always thought of music for me as like collages, and so very similar. You take these bits of your life, and I have one song where I recorded the blinds in my apartment that I was living at, and they were really creaky.
Okay.
And so I held my little recorder up there and kind of pulled on the blinds, and they made this creaking sound. And you put that into a sampler or my DAW and kind of manipulated them and made them more percussive to a grid, like eighth notes or quarter notes, and using those organic sounds that aren't a snare drum or a hi-hat or something,
of course, yeah.
And then when you listen back to it, it's like listening to a diary, right? Because whoever's listening to it, my audience or whatever, they don't know what that is. They know it sounds cool and organic, but for me, I'm hearing and visualizing my blinds while the synthesizers are doing this thing and all this stuff.
It's totally personalized.
Personalized.
And it's your experience.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I always keep like a recorder on me. I mean, that's always been, I've always done that, like since I was in the 80s or whatever. And, and like your Walkman or whatever, your recorder and stuff. And I'm glad I did it because like I took trips to like Egypt or, different countries or whatever. And I have those, I'm like on a camel with this guy singing. So I have all those clips. I recorded the birth of my son.
Wow.
On the table.
Oh, that's amazing. You're like, hold on, Doc.
I know, I'm like making sure it worked.
That's amazing.
So, I mean, that I even was thinking like that, even during that, so, I mean, I got done with tangible, okay?
Right, yeah.
For that, like, I know what tangible, so I got done with that need. I can go back to, and that's why, like, it's just a passion, it's a real passion of mine to like just get that record it.
And it's never been easier too. I mean, you can use your phone. I have this little recorder that's probably about the size of a Snickers bar or something. That one's really handy. I also have a bigger one. Well, that Tascam right there. That one's good.
I gotta get a better one actually, like one of those. I don't know. They come in like a bunch of tracks now. And
like the Zoom. They're all kind of do the same thing, but they're kind of like a musician's pocket knife, Swiss Army knife. I mean, you can do so many things with it, right? Like you can carry it around while you're traveling and record stuff. You can do podcasts with it. You can, what I'll do is I'll also hook that thing up to my sound card mixer or whatever with my DAW, and I'll just turn it on, and I'll turn on my synthesizers, my drum machines, and I'll just start making sounds and fiddling with things, and it's recording, but it's 128 gigabytes or whatever, so I don't have to worry about it running out. And so after an hour or two, I just have this recording of just any little sound that I might have made, and a lot of the things happen so in the moment, and you might twist some knob and hit the key, and it makes this weird little thing where you're like, what? Now I can't recreate it. And then you can go back to that and sift through it, and
I think that's why I did try modular back in the 80s, but I couldn't save much. I mean, I couldn't.
You're talking about modular synthesis?
Yeah, I mean the knobs and back then I had something, but it was called an SMS. It was a little unit, but all I ended up doing was sampling the the twists and turns.
Yeah.
I ended up sampling it anyway.
Right.
I mean, but if I can't go back to something, I just don't have interest.
Well,
sorry.
So I agree with you.
I mean, some people just like, it's the flow and then it's there, and like, because I know virtuosos that don't record themselves and they come out with like, this extremely great passages of like patterns and guitar or whatever, and it's like they don't record it.
Right.
I'm like, oh God, it's just
sacrilege.
Lost.
Yeah, right.
You lost it.
Right. Well, that is why I do like the modular. I haven't gotten into modular yet, just because it's kind of it's expensive and it's habit forming.
Well, you have to. You need a tow truck.
You do, yeah. Seriously, yeah, and a lot of a room dedicated to it. But I really do like the idea of modular for that reason, because
it sounds great though.
It does.
It does.
But I like the idea of these little things that might never happen again, right?
That's if you like that.
Yeah, kind of like like field recording or whatever. It's like you're capturing this thing and one-time thing, and it I completely get where you're. I mean, from a kind of OCD, trying to control everything, musician in me, like, knowing that I could make this sound, and then if I wanted to do something with it later beyond just having this recording of it, it's going to be difficult, or maybe not even possible. Like that's a little difficult to come to terms with, because a lot of stuff you're like, well, that's my sound, and you think of creating the sound that you might not be able to recall,
Yeah, I'm just all recall.
All about the recall.
All about recall, but
right.
And it's fine to not. I mean, it's actually it's also like where are you focusing your refinement, because it's your art anyway. Right. So you can spend your time like really refining your patches or whatever. I mean, that's your thing. It's like what is your thing? Yeah, that's really it. But
so that being said, what is your setup now? What are you using mostly to? What's in your studio?
I'm actually I have an older Pro Tools.
Oh,
I mean, I haven't done the subscription thing.
Yeah.
I just have the whole thing. So that's the composing environment. But then like the whole live thing, it's all Ableton.
Oh yeah.
And then like trying to make it as not DJing, you have to do something.
Yes, right.
So I'm making these really super complex things happen with Ableton, within Max for Live, and
I love Max.
and using like the whatever whatever I can do with it, and unplugging in all these different technologies out of it. And it's really incredible what it can do. I mean, Pro Tools cannot do it.
Yeah.
Just cannot. So anyway, I kind of have it separated, but I would love to sometime like have it merged. I mean, I heard about Rewire and having access to both worlds, and I mean, I have yet to do that, but I have an older version that's probably not compatible.
Yeah.
So I've yet to see what I can do in Ableton. But the thing is, I hear. I'm such a like engineering brain type, that like I can hear the quality difference. I mean, people say it's certain warping things and you have to turn off certain things in Ableton, but like I can still hear the finer quality in Pro Tools, and that's why I can't. And plus, I really like the ease, the environment of Pro Tools. So that's the composing thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I have tried to recollect some old vintage like drum machines and stuff like that, but like half my living room's like I can't walk in it. I can't. So now I'm like, I have this bench that like has a container in it where I'm just hiding it all, like,
nice.
so that so I can just get room.
Right.
Like,
have some semblance of a normal household. I'm the same way.
Yeah, and so but even the digital stuff's taking up all the room. So I know eventually it'd be great to be able to travel. I'd love to do touring or more. I want to explore like where else I can take my set.
Yeah.
I really love to get into more soundtracks, composing stuff, but because that whole area is a whole nother channel. But anyway, anywhere I can. That's why I feel like that's why I'm like sort of doing this video thing too. Is that I you know, I'm just, it has more immediacy, you know, that, you know, it's my creation, but, you know, so I feel like I am expanding my palettes to so many new things right now that actually opportunities are coming up faster than I can actually learn it.
Right.
So actually, that's a little bit of the problem. But I think there's a little gap, you know, in the next year. I think there's a little gap. I can just actually sit and focus and figure these little things out better. And you know, so I think it's evolving. Whereas before, I was a little stuck because I was stuck on this Pro Tools thing. I avoided Ableton forever. I don't know why.
Gear fear.
Yeah, it was probably.
Yeah,
but
still happens
this
to me.
Loyalty thing, I don't know. But it's but then, you know, but it's also the focusing thing. Like you're used to your headphones.
Yeah.
And,
and you sit down and you just want to create. You don't want to have to like relearn this thing that you kind of, you know.
Yeah, and I think it's just setting it up, the ease, like the color coding things and like giving things names where when you look at it, you know it's just that. Like you know, coloring that's only drums, like purple's drums or whatever, and like just that part you don't have to think about. You know, and it's the live thing's just interesting because if I'm a solo performer, I don't have all, you know, other people like, you know, doing the other parts and stuff like that. You know, you're like this octopus with two arms.
Yeah, right.
So so you have to really what do you call it, economize or whatever. You have to streamline or where you know where you focus and plus you have to present it.
Right.
So so you know, the live thing's only been happening in the last year, really, and numerous years have gone by where I'm just studio focusing on that. And then and actually what spawned that whole live thing actually was the there's this record company, Dark Entries, and they released a 6 LP box set of my 80s to 90s.
Whoa.
And it has a booklet. It's really beautifully done.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah. Wow. And so I thought, if that's coming out, like, and I'm just sitting in my studio, like, I think, you know, it might be good to, like, you know, perform or something.
Right.
This thing. So that kind of spawned that, and then the more things came, and then it just like continued, like almost nonstop.
Yeah. Right.
So that's kind of like, you know, that's and it's great to be. I mean, I love performing live. I mean, it's great. It's more like, how do you work with technology and you know, and making sure, like, if there's one thing not working, then, you know, like, I've been to shows where, you know, like right before the set, you know, one thing doesn't work and I have to make my phone call to people who I know, you know.
Yeah, right.
And so I you know, that's the nervous part. I'm sure every performer has that nervousness.
That's the exciting thing about performing live. And just like you said, like, you want to make it performing and not just DJing, because you have to like do something, right? But the idea of what makes performing exciting is the fact that it could fall apart at any second.
Is that exciting for you?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I think for the audience, right? Like, if the audience knows that, you know, that's why people, you know, lose it when they hear that, you know, X, Y, and Z big artist at you know, EDC was playing a pre-recorded set, right? It kind of like takes the magic out of it. You're like, oh, so it wasn't really. You're just up there waving your hands. You know what I mean?
At the same time, I don't know, because like I said, the every single piece of my work, and it's all sound designed. I mean, the compositional aspect, the studio aspect, or whatever, that is your work. That's your performance.
Yeah, for sure.
But you can't possibly perform them all. You can't possibly do it.
Right.
So, and I understand, you know, you're playing a pre-recorded thing, because you can't. Sometimes you just can't perform the whole piece.
I meant like a pre-recorded DJ set. Like, the music is already spliced together, and you know, like, they're standing in front of CDJs. Not like, you know, like,
it's that fine line, man.
It's
an old fine line.
You're right. Well, if you're performing with like Ableton Live or something, and you have these long, you know, kind of pre-recorded bits, whether there's, you know, a synth or whatever, or a field recording and a drum machine and a bass, and you're weaving them in and out. You know what I mean? In my personal opinion, as long as you're doing something to manipulate them, however best you can on some level.
Yeah.
You know, that's what, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you know, back in the day, I guess, I mean, you had a band, I mean, to perform these things, but we were talking about electronic music and sound design based electronic music. So that's why I have these Sensomorphs. I have as many as I can. I have 2 iPads with it.
Right.
You know, I'm you know, I was like, look, I'm doing it.
I'm doing things.
I'm doing it, all right?
Yeah.
But I still have I do have like some backing tracks. However, even the backing tracks are reinforced with something live.
Yes.
So I still have to have something, and they have to work too.
Yeah. Right.
And that's why, like, a tech there, you know, I always like try to have somebody, but if not, then you know, we just make sure it works or something.
Totally.
But and you know, and usually in live performance, you have got, you know, a singer, you know, on top of that or whatever, and so, you know, that's another whole element, but and that's what you can do live, right? You can be a singer in front of like a tape or something.
Sure.
That's kind of been done, I guess.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
so that's another way of doing live is singing, I guess.
So what's are you using? You mentioned iPads and these other things. Are you using Macs for Live, or what's going on with iPads? What's going on with the MPE stuff?
So within Ableton, I have 2 Sensomorphs. One is for a designed layout of my samples on one pad.
Oh.
So it's like it looks like a trackpad, for example, but just like bigger. And then there's just something called the Innovator's Overlay, which is fascinating to me because it's just a blank, and you can design any area of the Sensomorph pad to trigger something.
Whoa.
So you can have, like, for me, I've got, like, say 50 samples or something. I can design 50 boxes, and each one will hit the sample.
Oh.
Or you can, like, what I also did for the MPE Sensomorph was I printed out one of my paintings, and then you cut it out to fit the Sensomorph pad, because it looks pretty, you know. But then you can assign where, like, say you've got a painting of, like, say 5 flowers, for example, then you can design each flower to be a sound.
No kidding.
And then you can use MPE to use velocity, and if you push, because it's a sensor pad, you can have it have different sounds within the one flower.
Like velocity.
Velocity, but each velocity level can be a different sound.
Holy cow. Well, yeah, so multi-sampled velocity sensitivity.
Sensitivity and in design, in each level's a MIDI.
On a flower.
On a flower. And it could be your head.
Whoa.
It could be anything.
That's incredible.
And so I have a design, like an art piece or something, and then that combines my visual and audio. Because I had those in separate areas in my life. Like, I have painting. I started out actually as a illustrator or a fine artist or whatever. I mean, actually, I went to art school and all that. And it's funny because when I graduated from art school, I had a connection in Asia to show my fine art, and that connection led me to showing my paintings in a convention with original Van Goghs.
Whoa.
And Matisse or Warhol, like originals, not copies. They're in a convention.
Holy
so you went from, you know, art school to showing with, like, Van Gogh stuff.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, I'm done.
Where do you go from there?
I know. It's like, I'm done. But then to be honest, I mean, it's, and then those clients get so exclusive, and it's like 5 people.
Yeah.
They're like viewing it. I'm like, okay. And it's, you know, catered because you know that's that audience there.
Right.
It's that. And I bet Van Gogh and, you know, all those artists, classical artists, they had to sell it. They cater too. I mean, they're, you know, all the whole Renaissance and catering to the kings or whatever, you know. So what is the real art?
Right.
That's you know, where you take that away, like, okay, so you know, what is your art? You know, it's without that having to do that or whatever. But so anyway, I went from art school to that, and I don't know where
Doesn't matter. This podcast is all about tangents.
I know what happened.
What happened? What have I been saying for the last 30 minutes?
I was going somewhere. I know it was.
Yeah. We were talking about like your MPE and creating sounds with the flowers.
Oh, yeah.
Stuff.
So that was a layer.
Yeah.
That was one of the art layers.
Yeah. There we go.
Yeah. So I had, it was weird because when I went to art school, I had my friends were all, in the music. I went out into the clubs, and those were my friends, and where I was really hanging around.
Yeah.
But I separated, seemed how like two different worlds or something. So anyway, back to this stencil thing. So I thought, wow, why don't I just put it together and make this? I mean, I could do a video, but in terms of like expression, like the painting, I want to to convey like the deeper layers of something. I mean, it's just visually nice. Yeah. But you can express through visually and then use the stencil or the sensory aspect, the layers, and then you can design it however you want. So that's some fascinating thing that I'm kind of now exploring right now. But that's my latest. But
nice. It sounds kind of like lemur. Are you familiar with lemur? Like they make hardware and software, but they make essentially you can buy it for iPad now, but you can create your own touch sensitive faders, buttons. You can add I think you can add artwork maybe.
I don't think I heard.
Yeah, and you can give them each a MIDI functionality.
Oh, that's cool.
So, and I've been looking into it recently. I literally just brought my iPad here today because we use a software called Madrix for the lighting.
Oh, okay.
Wow. Which is great. It's super flexible. You can throw video files at it, and this whole thing, this whole room, all the white lights that you're seeing, is like one really big low resolution TV screen or computer monitor. And so when you put videos like a VJ loop or something, it will take those colors and the brightness and it will turn it into what you see.
I'll look into that. That sounds potential.
Yeah. Well, but the problem is I'm limited right now to one of the computers is touchscreen, but not the computer that runs this. So I'm limited to one mouse, to using mouse movements to do all these quick things that need to happen to the timing of music.
Now, are you using PC or
PC? Yeah.
Okay, so that I can't.
Yeah.
Then I can't. I don't know about because can you do Lemur on Mac or?
Yeah, I think it's OS agnostic.
Okay.
Okay.
But I come from the old day where like, is it PC or Mac?
Right. Yeah. Well, so
arch enemies.
Yeah. So I will be using my iPad, which is Mac, Apple, but. Cool. What you can do is what I'm hoping to do is you can wirelessly connect the Lemur software on the iPad to your Wi-Fi, which then will work with Madrix for the lighting. So I'm gonna make my own custom layout with faders and buttons and stuff. That's cool. So and then MIDI that to Madrix.
All right.
So then I'll be able to actually do multiple things at once and not just be stuck to clicking around.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So I can raise the brightness. I can change colors real quick and do all this stuff. And
I know there should just be one big pad and you just design everything in that where it's just convenience.
Exactly.
It's like. So anyways, I'm using the Ableton to like plug in some of this stuff and so anyway, so then I trigger drum machines and and what else do I? And then the iPad. So the one of the stencil mores when I mentioned about the flower, and then so there's software or there's apps that are MPE enabled. I guess they have to be. And then that's triggered off an iPad.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so then, is that? Are people seeing that? While I'm imagining like your artwork with the the MIDI functionality and the pads or whatever built in. But is that something that the audience is seeing? Is the video output?
That's a great question. Yeah. It's funny because there's no stand for the Sensimorph. I mean, I think it was meant to kind of be on a table. Oh, yeah. But I like it visually, because originally I'm using it for drum samples.
Okay.
So I would clip it on using an iPad holder. Yeah. But it's kind of loose. And you also, you can't. I mean, you have to hold it because it's just gonna knock over on a mic stand. You know,
Right.
so I'm still working that. I mean, I want to design something that's just like built for it or whatever. So yeah, I just have it up on the mic stand, like visually, like facing the audience or something.
Okay. So you're kind of it's there, and you're kind of it's got your artwork and the functionality you've built into it, and you can kind of do your thing while people watch, kind of over your shoulder, so to speak, right?
Yeah, I could. Yeah, I could do that.
Nice.
I'm controlling. I'm using push.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I've got a push too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A push too. I've
pushed two also.
Two.
Yeah. Exactly right.
So that's kind of helpful too. Like if you're on a roll.
Yeah.
Or something, you have to just like loop, or well, not loop, but you can go back to something. Or whatever. That's handy.
Yeah.
You
That
know?
thing was for me a game changer because I had so many MIDI keyboards and stuff, and then they say, oh, it's got a template for Ableton Live, and then you bring it up, and none of the stuff has what I wanted and what I enjoy out of the push too is everything is permanently linked to Ableton. So I mean, all the functionality it's Ableton Live, but in physical format, which was great. That you don't have to MIDI map anything or write things on tape and stick it onto your MIDI keyboard.
I think it just seems like it just goes along the lines of this tangible thing. Like
Yes.
this is like the new little phase where like whatever section we're in history, like this is tangible history, right? That but or it's merging, or it's kind of finding its refinement. The modular thing, like had to bring back to refine something that got left behind or whatever.
Right.
Or do people just in like that brittle digital thing or whatever thing. But it's all merging together. It's just a matter of like where it's all perfecting right now. So I'm wondering, what's going to come out of this. I mean, I was reading another, like, there's so many inventive things right now. It's kind of interesting. I read about binaural keyboards.
Whoa.
I don't know. I have to hear it.
I'm familiar with binaural recordings, but what is a binaural keyboard?
I couldn't completely explain. I was just kind of glanced over it, but I just assume that it's more spatial for some reason. Like you can hear it, I think. But I read that. That's something that all these new things.
Right. So maybe when you play back the samples or the keyboard sounds, they're kind of
more spatial.
They're being coded out into a binaural sound rather than in post processing
or something. It's more so it seems like there's this this territory of like this technology that's really like progressing really fast. Just these so many really interesting new things going on.
Right.
But yet there's like this vintage thing that's also happening that like we just want to be in this territory.
Right.
And it's only this territory. It's like because there's anti-sample people out there.
Right. Well, that's what fascinates me about the music world, audio world versus like video. When something is done or outdated with video, it's pretty much dead in the water.
Really?
I mean, yeah.
I don't know that word
to a certain degree. Like you wouldn't pick up a VHS camcorder and try to film your documentary.
Oh no, that's totally in.
Well, no. So no, I agree. I mean, I would. That's something I would like to do, but your average person who's trying to just be a video professional is not going to use a VHS. They're going to use the camera like you and I have, right? Okay. But with audio, I mean, you have these vintage microphones from the 60s and 50s that are going for top dollar. Like we have this kind of nostalgic thing, you know?
Yeah, that's the vintage car thing.
Right.
Or it's the sound. I mean, there's something about
sound,
the spring sound, the spring spring reverb. Or of course.
Nostalgic. It's all based in nostalgia, I think.
Yeah, but it's also it's sound from that era.
True.
It's nostalgic, but I mean, it could trigger that period. But actually, I think it's a certain sound you want, and to capture, certain things.
Which I guess is going on with video stuff as well, right? I mean, you have Instagram filters. Like, what's an Instagram filter doing? It's recreating the look of old Polaroid film or Fuji film or something.
Or sorry, I'm going to bring up a movie, that Lighthouse movie. Have you seen that?
No.
Oh, well, I mean, that's entirely that. I mean,
Really?
It puts you back in like some era, late 1800s or something. And even the acting is like incredible.
Whoa.
But it just brings you back into that old vintage thing right there. So you should see it.
Yeah, Lighthouse.
It's interesting.
Have you seen, are you familiar with the new Behringer DeepMind 12?
No, I don't think so.
So Behringer has been doing this really big push in the last couple of years where they're making, their own original stuff, which I think is fantastic.
Oh, yeah, well, like the Moog or something.
Yeah,
like
yeah. They're recreating
stuff.
Yeah, they're
there's
kind
tons of it.
Yeah, recreating a lot of stuff that's kind of outdated. But then the DeepMind is a new product that they came up completely original. It was I was watching a video of it when it came out a number of years ago at NAMM, the music conference in LA, and they were showcasing it, and it's a really great flexible synthesizer, with lots of functionality, and they kind of glossed over the fact that you can plug in and use it in virtual reality. So built into the synthesizer has a VR plug, and I don't know the details of what that
Cool.
involves, but you can put on VR goggles and you can program the synth in VR, so you can go like this and you can turn your oscillators and your filters and that sort of thing, all coming out of this physical keyboard synthesizer.
Interesting, yeah.
And I think that's, while it's kind of a gimmick right now,
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of the future.
Right.
Just
But what's
ensemble.
in the VR though? What's the image?
You're seeing kind of a black screen, but then they're almost like Tron, like the old Tron movies, You're kind of seeing a visual representation of the keyboard, but it's kind of here in 3D space.
Oh, that's interesting.
And
okay.
and you're able to interact with so I mean, essentially it's just the same thing that, you're seeing in front of you and, on the keyboard, but I think they're just kind of trying to dip their toes into into VR and that sort of thing.
Right. I mean, eventually, of course,
augmented reality.
You'll have those like glass where you're like swiping stuff in midair.
Like in the Matrix or whatever.
Yeah, like one of those like science fiction movies where
Right.
you're just like,
right. Yeah.
But yeah, it's that the VR has got a ways to go. I mean, it's too much. Consumption, computer consumption for what you're getting,
Right.
in a way. Like I think AR is kind of interesting. Like
AR, that's
overlapping.
That's
stuff.
what I meant. I think more than VR.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
AR. Yeah.
Augmented reality.
The augmenting. Yeah.
Or maybe I guess if you're in the keyboard, I guess that would be.
Well, if you're putting
VR.
a headset.
Yeah, that's VR.
Yeah.
Augmented reality would be like holding your phone up and seeing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean. I mean that's got its ways to go, I guess. I mean, because again, that's stemming from like the 90s, I mean, so it's. I think somebody's out there like totally inventing something really brand new, So.
Well, you've got Pokemon Go. Are you familiar with that?
Which
Pokemon Go was a number of years, probably 3 or 4 years ago. It came out, and it's a phone app. And it's a game, but you hold up your phone and it shows you the camera, just like you're shooting a video. But what's on your screen is these little Pokemon characters. And so for, right when it came out, it got hugely popular. And you would see all these people walking around downtown or their neighborhood with their phone out, and they're going like this, and they're searching for Pokemon. Because you have to physically walk. You can't just play the game sitting in your.
I don't know about that one.
Yeah. So that's a great example of AR actually being implemented right now, and it did fantastic. I think people still play it,
Yeah, I have this poster of a map in my room, and it's like there's this comes with a little app that it has AR, and when you pull up your phone to the map, then all this information comes out about the country.
Whoa, that's cool.
So I mean, it's kind of interesting, like that kind of thing. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, right. Do you have the time? What my phone's being used for? I want to make sure. Oh, it's 8. Okay, we're fine. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, we have the regular club thing tonight, but it doesn't start until 9, so we're not pressed for time.
Very cool.
Yeah. So what is your future stuff like studio recording going to look like? Do you have any plans? Is it kind of more of are you incorporating some of your live stuff into the studio or vice versa?
Great question. Because actually, there's so, as like, I'm so behind. I mean, I have I was going to say, just jumping the slide a little bit, because I was mentioning like my diaries and stuff. So
Yeah.
I mean, I've already edited a diary, which is like 700 pages, edited. So that needs to be kind of like wrapped up and printed somehow. But anyway, so that's like another thing that's right, like in all these projects things. But so then I've got these couple documentary things. So I kind of have to reconfigure like the Pro Tools thing for soundtrack and visual stuff right now. That's kind of like I'm focused on that. But it's all just templating out, different sets for Pro Tools, for the modes of video mode or composing mode. Like I need to organize all this stuff, like color code it, like soundtrack.
Right.
But so I really have to be able to organize this stuff, because there's more and more stuff coming, on the plate.
Yeah.
And so if I were to do, I mean, there's stuff coming off live, but live is live, and if anything would be coming from live, it would be like just like a release of the live or something. But I'm not sure what to. I mean, I could do an album with the set or something, but I'm not sure. I mean, because I want to reserve it, just for live stuff. But I actually am really anxious to get the template for composing a lot more refined, or I have to reconfigure stuff for composing. I think
composing for movies and stuff, or for music,
for music.
Okay,
I want to create the soundtrack for this documentary thing, and again, I'm in this kind of mode where I'm between like the video, like video and creating stuff for video type of stuff, like documentaries. Like I have like 3 or 4 things already. Like it's just not enough time.
There's just so much stuff to learn, and
well, I have so much footage.
Yeah,
like it's just like going back to like the 100 album thing. Now I have too many images. I can't even tell you. Like I have like. I'm trying to count how many terabyte drives I have.
Oh my God.
Just for my son.
Yeah. Holy cow.
I'm just kidding. I mean, just like every angle of that one, it's like, but now it's everything. Like I just carry my video camera, everything, like my iPhone as my video, everything, just like my Walkman now.
Right.
Like everything.
Right. Yeah.
So I have so many images to work with. I mean, for the Hong Kong thing, I have like probably 4 or 5 hours of stuff, and it's just what to use.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking maybe my DVD should be like 5 hours or something.
Right.
It's gonna be a 5-hour movie.
Well, I know all about it. I just had to buy an 8 terabyte hard drive to store these episodes, because each one is recording an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours,
of course,
of 1080p footage, and it's not encoded. That's like full. So each one is like I think 8 or 9 gigabytes, and then and then the audio recording, and then all the other stuff, and the project file for the video. It's just like it's insane.
And I bet everybody has that too.
Yeah, right.
And I mean, I always thought that my work was like 30, 40 years of a movie that never ended. I mean, like that kept going.
Yeah.
It just, so it's nobody's edited.
Nobody's edited.
Until recently.
Yeah. Yeah, I was reading that on your website, that was a very concerted effort that you had to do, that took about a year, right, to sit down and put all this stuff into digital format and then on your website, and
Well, it's interesting how that kind of started, because I was involved with like a group that was studying Buddhism, and they had an electronic music band in it, and then I was involved in it, I guess. And then, but they needed someone to master their albums and stuff. So they actually bought some of my gear.
Whoa.
And then, but it took so long between their albums, I guess. And then I thought, okay, well, I can make use of this. And so I started mastering my cassettes, and then it just kept going. And I'm like, wait a minute. And then I discovered like more, like buying boxes and DATs and reels. And so I refound reel to reels. And then that Dark Entries box set came about, and so I had to actually really look for reels, and it's all this cataloging started coming into play, and then it just shaped into a what I call a memoir of sound.com.
Yeah, .com. Was this a conscious effort? I mean, I think over the years I've collected stuff and from when I was a kid and a teen and stuff that your parents don't want to store it anymore, so they're like, here, take this, and then over the years moving and that sort of thing, going to college and different houses, and that list of things that I was holding on to got less and less and less and less, and now that I live in San Francisco, with roommates, like I think that list of things is smaller than it's ever been.
I'm sure, like people have to throw away things when they're moving.
Right. So how did you keep all this stuff archived?
I think it stemmed from when I was a child. I used to write books as when you're like 6 or 7, and then I actually it all started from those illustrations and books and stories that I wrote. And I guess when we moved, like my mother always saved them, and then I realized that they're part of history, and actually, importantly so. Like I moved every time I moved as growing up as a child, like you're going to a new school, new friends or whatever, and you have all those memories of your past friends from the last house or whatever, and nobody knows that.
Right.
Only you know that. Yeah. And then it kept going, and there's so many. So I felt like not lost, but like I had those memories of going on to the next thing, and nobody knew about it. Like if you complain about somebody from your past, like nobody cares,
right?
Or something, And so when you meet people with some hang up, I already know how to solve it.
Yeah.
You just say nobody cares. I'm not. No, I won't say that.
No, that's very true.
I won't. Not leave them hanging like that. But I'm just saying, because I know that, because I had to hang up about somebody, and somebody said nobody really cares. I'm like, okay, actually, if nobody cares, then I'm not going to care.
Right.
Anyway, so I stored all those memories of those things. So then I started writing diaries since I was like 9. I started those next, like the weather, talking about the weather patterns, and then the next day how the weather was. Like I was in the East Coast or something, the snow one day and what the degrees were, and then I start recording on audio recordings about that, like how my voice sounds and whatever. So I kept it, that's in a way to keep the memory. I guess categorized. I don't know how to call it, but that you knew what happened,
right?
Because you're not just some. If you're trying to write a memoir now without without having documented anything, it's like how are you going to remember all those conversations you've had? Like you just forget.
Yeah, the human memory is very volatile and fleeting. You know what I mean? I mean, there's a lot of things that
it's short-term memory and long-term. But even that. But if you're going to write a memoir, like I'm amazed at some memoirs, like how much people remember actually. But and so, but like I guess the older you get, like you start forgetting even what you did yesterday or whatever. And, it's like, but so I don't know, at a young age, I mean like childhood age, like because of those moves, I think. Like that was that realization there. Like I was starting to like hold on to things, memories through whatever form.
Yeah.
And I mean even bad things, because if you have a bad thing happen later and you forget like what triggered that bad thing or whatever, then you start having these issues or whatever.
Right.
So actually, if you have a diary of like everything that happened or whatever, then you go, oh, I knew where it came from. It's like it's kind of in a way
trace your steps,
like a little tracing, tracing it, and actually it's kind of therapeutic and bad things aren't bad sometimes because you're to me it's just another shape. And it's like what added to your whole character or whatever. And it's just like when you have you record your blinds, and you're like, you're glad you had that blind. I don't know.
Yeah. No, totally.
It's
totally,
weird.
Yeah.
It's your personal thing. That's why this is, iPhone, I this, I that. It's just like this whole personalization thing, because it's like, this idea of like who are you, thing, so.
Well, it's funny you say that. So 2 things. I was amazed at going through your recordings that you have on your website, categorized. I really felt like I was able to glean a lot about you, and I felt like I kind of knew you to a certain sense, more than just the interaction that we had in person.
Yeah, although a lot of the stuff I expressed were to as a catharsis, for like the bad things. So you don't know the good things that happen.
Yeah, right.
Because I recorded all the bad things.
Right.
And then, but it's interesting, like at a certain point, if you listen to the last recording of like when I recorded myself as a teenager, I'm like, okay, I'm depressed.
I remember I heard that one. Yeah.
And then it stopped.
I think you said, I'm just not enthused as I was in those previous recordings.
It's like, so then it turned into Charred Blossoms, like my first album, like that's that grit,
Yeah.
So, you can tell, definitely you can tell a lot about the person, even if they didn't keep that log. You can, they're, people's albums. That's what it, that reflects their emotions when they wrote it. That's what that's how that.
Yeah.
But in terms of like the whole vast thing, I mean, you can tell a lot of person. And then when my diaries come out, then you can really tell it.
Yeah,
you can,
right.
You can read like literally,
That's what I like so much about this, is I plan on doing this for as long as possible, but hopefully the rest of my life. And this is literally this is turning into it's a diary. I mean,
it is.
Even me watching the first episode, the pilot of this podcast, I'm able to look back and be like, oh, that was me and my buddy Ryan. The pilot was filmed in our garage, and I was able to hear what I was going, even just a year ago, just hear where I was in my life and that sort of thing, and it's fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's like your little, evolution or whatever of your life or whatever,
right.
and you don't lose track, because these days, of course, you're everything's so distracting, and and then like. You can just get so caught up daily.
Yeah.
I mean, I get caught up daily, like reading news or whatever's happening, and then you actually don't live anything.
Right.
Because it's just like fed here and fed there, and
right.
routines and or whatever. But, so that's why I sometimes like traveling. Like you take yourself completely. I mean, the state of mind, even though it's like you're kind of like in this, like when you're in a plane, and you're above the clouds, and and you're totally neutral, because there's not, you're not tied to anything at that point. But like, and that's why I studied kind of like this, the Buddhism thing too, like, because you're not learning to detach, but like you're neutral, and then you see things exactly how they are. You're not feeding any opinions. You can get like, you're not, you don't have illusions about stuff. I mean, you could just the idea is just when you meditate or something, you clean off all those
removing your own biases, sort of.
Yeah, the biases and whatever, and then when you open your eyes, it's like clean slate or whatever. But the idea is to be that way all the time.
Yeah.
And then so everything's neutral.
Right.
And so that's why when I do my field recordings, or it's still, I mean, this nonfiction thing, but when I'm, and it helps kind of your focus, and you're designing stuff, because it's more clear,
right.
what you want. You can see your goals easier and things like that. So, although I'm completely complicating it with technology, I'm completely complicating my insights.
That's the fun part.
I know, I mean, so that's that. It's that the contrast too, and it makes it fun, because it's keeps it going.
Yeah, right. I love it. Well, so I'm hearing people starting to show up. So we should probably wrap this up, which is, we got an hour and 30 in, so it was a good healthy podcast.
It was fun.
Yeah. Thank you for coming out down here and doing this with me.
It was great. Thank you. It was really fun.
And I'm really am excited that I would hope that we can do another one of these. Maybe a couple months down the line or something, and circle back and continue to talk about this stuff. I really like being able to go deep into the weeds with the really technical side of music, and not just music theory, but kind of like we were talking about, like music psychology, I suppose.
Oh yeah,
I love that stuff.
Really. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean that stuff is
it's fascinating.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you approach it from that way, then it opens up like a lot more depth, and it's you can tap so many different areas,
right?
And then you can inform all your work through those kind of eyes, So that's and then. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So you got anything you want to plug? You want to plug your website?
Oh, well, it's memoirofsound.com, and Memoir of Sound is actually plugged into my other website, Carolyn Fok. I never even talked about CYRNAI.
Oh, it's right. Yeah, I know. Shoot.
So, by the way,
yeah, that's your musical alias.
Yes, that was created when in the '80s as a teenager.
Yeah.
So I actually edited my name Carolyn and just used some letters and created CYRNAI. And I think in a way it was like a way to not. I don't want to say hiding, but like I have like conservative family, right?
Exactly,
so I'm like just creating this other name where like all the dark stuff can go
to
in.
Disconnect from your old self and kind of create under a new self and kind of
I mean, I think that, all the aliases kind of do that, I guess. But so CYRNAI like spawned all these albums actually, and actually that side CYRNAI is like kind of like I don't want to say the dark side, but the subconscious side.
Yeah.
And Carolyn Fok is like the just more, I don't want to say conservative, but like, more nice person. I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's just, that yin and yang thing, I guess, but it's the subconscious and conscious thing, that pull. And so, so CYRNAI is kind of like the performing name at this time.
Nice.
And occasionally, Carolyn Fok's like the artist, painter side or whatever. So now I'm kind of like merging it a little bit. But CYRNAI really came back because like, there was interest. Like this vintage interest. Yeah. It just completely like, really like blew, CYRNAI out of the ground or out of behind the like the hiding place or whatever, and now it's like really forefront now.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah, so that's CYRNAI.
I love it.
Kind of. Well, to be continued.
To be continued. Yes, we have much more to talk about.
Yeah.
But yes, thank you again.
Thank you. It was really fun.
Yeah, and again, it's been Carolyn Fok, CYRNAI, and what is it? Episode number 39. We're here at Halcyon in downtown San Francisco. I got to thank Rhea, Gina, JoJo. Sorry, I'm hearing people in the background. Mikey Payton, Dean, all of them for letting us host here. And if you want to check out previous episodes, previous recordings, we're on pretty much every major platform. So SoundCloud, YouTube, Instagram, Mixcloud, all of them. So I'm Scott Brio, and we will see you guys on the next one.
Bye.
Peace out.